Cousin Jared, we are live. We do not have a 1 minute countdown. We could play 1 minute countdown. It'll be completely backwards, but this is what happens when you have different profiles on this thing in order to get all the things going right. So we will get going here shortly. I don't even remember which one you liked. We'll just click one of these for 1 minute countdown, and then we will be back shortly, ready to talk about some college football. And officially now welcome to Takes of the Press, of the sports betting show hosted by a real statistics professor. This is College Football Week 13. You can see the Week 12 recap there on the screen. Cousin Jared, we talked a lot throughout last week, and I think it was kind of evident in the few top plays we had that we really felt last week was one where the lines were pretty well priced. And we kind of saw the same thing here today in the NFL, which tends to happen as the season moves along for every sport. They get a little bit, except for baseball. I feel like baseball, it's always just a little bit, baseball's such an individual sport. You don't quite see that, but in every other sport, it seems like the lines get better and better, and we felt that way last week. So honestly, we kind of were basically break even, slightly down, but still great profits for the season. And I think that's not bad for us given how we felt about that. We don't feel that way this week. There's a lot that we like this week. I don't really know. It's like a 1 week aberration where the books figured things out. And then now this week, I feel like we're back to like, no, now y'all are just as confused as ever, it seems like. What's your take on all that, Cousin Jared?
Well, I would say that looking at all of our recommended picks for the season, this is only the fourth week that we had a down week. And as you can see there, just barely down one unit. So overall, nothing to complain about. The red is definitely a foreign color. Haven't seen that very much this season when it comes to college football. But hey, on the whole, still doing great. So no complaints at all.
Yeah. We've got 8 top plays this week, which might be the most we've had for any week or tied for the most we've had for any week. We already have a bunch of honorable mentions. Usually we kind of add a few more later on. There are still a few I think we've got our eye on weather-wise, key number-wise, injury-wise. There's a couple of key players, quarterbacks really, that their status is very much up in the air that I'm kind of like, I want to know a little bit more about what's happening here before we dive into it. But optimistic here going forward. And
you mentioned on some of the totals there, just a reminder, especially the Midwest, the North, you want to check the weather before you're playing any overs. So that's generally something we may have a play we like. We may save it for day of to make sure that the weather's not doing anything crazy there. And just again, a reminder, not all weather matters though. And so that Ball State and Buffalo game was a perfect example where it was cold, but did not prevent them from scoring about 100 points in that game with an assist from overtime. So anyway, just a reminder, especially this time of year, you want to be cognizant of those overs in the Midwest, especially.
We had the one last week with all the rain, and we almost got to the over by halftime. And thankfully, there was like a scoreless third quarter, but thankfully we got there in the fourth quarter with that one. So like you said, all weather is not created equally. Just if I say this without many people being here, if you weren't here watching us live 9 p.m. Eastern, this is kind of we've been doing these live shows Sunday through Thursday. The Sunday night show being college football, the other shows being college basketball. If you're able to hop in the chat, ask us questions about other games that we aren't talking about, we'll kind of hit them at the end if we feel like we have anything to say, or chime in about the game we're talking about. If there's any questions or comments or whatever, and if possible, we might respond to that. So, just kind of something to keep in mind going forward as we kind of try out this live thing and see how it works. I always love interacting with people as we, talk about college football. Cousin Jared, I feel like this week's show is going to be really interesting because I was going through the picks and what we're talking about. I feel like my rationale for half of these picks is going to be, I kind of feel like this has been the way things have gone. I haven't actually looked to see if it's so if you're maybe watching this and they say this is kind of you may just feel like you're at our living room, because this is the type of stuff we do. But then of course someone like pulls up their phone. Actually, you can fact check that now. So because we may fact check ourselves in real time and see if my feelings are accurate on some of these. But I will tell you, and I don't know if you're like this when you are betting on things, when you're making picks in front of, and we're getting thousands of views on these things, and so I know a lot of people are seeing them, and if things go well or don't go well, it does stick with you a little bit. So a lot of these teams that we've made picks on a lot, whether it's sides or totals or whatever, some of these things aren't just feelings as much as they are like these have been imprinted in my brain because I'm living and dying with this stuff probably more than you are, viewer.
Yeah, well, and I would even say a lot of times people on Discord will ask us specifically about maybe an A grade play that we didn't make. And same thing. It's because, we've learned our lesson. You can't trust whatever you say. All models are bad. Some are useful. Sideline definitely. Yeah. Okay. But Sideline definitely has its blind spots where it's just like, look, just kind of got to disregard what it says about this. And there's a handful of those every week. Probably say, just ignore those. But similarly, we know which ones it's really got a real good beat on. And so that's a lot of, I think, what you may be referring to.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one this week that's like the Big 12 where it's like, hey, we went over with this team last week. It didn't work. We went over with this team last week. It didn't work. They're playing each other. The model says over. And I'm like, the model just hasn't caught up yet. The pace metrics, everything, it just hasn't caught up to I'm just not going to do it, right? Doesn't mean it won't win. It just means I'm seeing, either the blind spot or the lagging or whatever. Like you said, and I say it all the time, right? All models are wrong. Some models are useful. So knowing our model does really help us a lot. So we'll get to it here. Some quick reminders. If you're looking for all of the goodies, all the information, Dub Club is the place to be for that. The Honor Roll All Access package gets all sorts of projections, notes, details. For the people who are in there, you are going to be overwhelmed with information. I've done my best to give it to you in a manner that you can digest as much as you want or as little as you want, along with our Discord chat, which has picks on every single sport, a chat room for every single sport, a lot of great things happening over there. And I need to change the slide. The old pricing is gone, but you can still get half off your first month if you use the link in the show description. And we have a sport-specific package for those things. If you're interested in college football and you're just joining us late, it's a 365 days. So you can still pay now, and you'll get 360. You don't just get the end of this season. You'll get the first 3 quarters of next season too for that same money. So it's something to check out if you're interested about that. Reminders about the model. It's a player-based model. Ratings reflect the current roster, which is it's really this time of year is mattering with injuries. Guys are already multiple guys now left the program.
Yeah, I was supposed to say Kennesaw State's team transfer.
Yeah, half their team, and they've actually played pretty pretty good. Last week for that.
Relatively.
Yeah, but that's important to remember. It's not about what they've done. It's about who they are now and how we think they are going to be going forward. Average rate's 100, higher implies more points, lower is good for defense, higher, of course, good for offense. Predicting the average game, one game is unknown. We do not know what's going to happen in one game. Sports, human beings, college kids are unpredictable, but it's the average that helps out. We know what prices are good prices, what numbers are good numbers in the long run, and that's how we make money. It's not about, I can tell you what's going to happen here. Nobody can. It's about saying, hey, in the long run, if we're making these types of plays, we know we have a formula for success. And that doesn't mean it wins every single game. It doesn't mean it wins every single day. But in the long run, you can see all the profits that we've had. It's definitely proven itself. Model gives ABC, love like lean is another way to think about it. We choose the plays. Thursday night, NC State and Georgia Tech. The only weeknight game we're going to cover on this show. We've got this as pretty much a pick 'em, pretty close. NC State we've got as the slightly better team, mainly because we like their offense a little bit more than any other unit on the field. Haynes King still questionable, probable. He played against Miami and was definitely a shell of himself. You could tell visibly injured.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of in this limbo of we're still not exactly sure what we're going to get from him. If he actually is 100%, this Georgia Tech offense is a little bit closer. So that's kind of something to take note of, that we've got this as NC State as the slightest of slight favorites. But if Haynes King's maybe a little bit more healthy, which is very possible, then maybe that flips and Georgia Tech should be slight favorites. But either way, it's as close to a pick-em. We think this should be kind of in the field goal-ish range as what the spread should be. A touchdown for either side would be fantastic. So we're going to be at NC State because we're getting 8.5. We're getting more than a touchdown. A grade pick from us. Cousin Jared, what sticks out to you about this game?
I know I've said this before when we've been talking about Georgia Tech, but I feel like the first game of the season against Florida State sticks out in everybody's mind because it was one of the only games that was going on that weekend, and everybody was like,
and Florida State's like terrible."
Yeah, and like literally, what does that matter at this point? That almost means nothing. Georgia Tech definitely has, they've won some conference games, they've lost some conference games, but of those conference games they've won, they've only won one by more than one score. And you alluded to, that. Haynes King looked like a shell of his former self. Big win over Miami, of course. But for me, that game was more about that's kind of the way that Miami had been playing all season defensively.
Yeah.
And if Miami, they needed their offense to carry them absolutely every week. And if there were any hiccups, whether, Cam Ward was just off a little bit, the receivers were having some drops, whatever it might be, that was going to be the result for Miami. And so I know it sounds like I'm not giving Georgia Tech any credit for that win. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I think that had more to do with, just the, the weaknesses that Miami had as opposed to necessarily what Georgia Tech had. You talked about Haynes King being hobbled. I think specifically did not practice the week of the Miami game because he's like, I'm playing in this game and I do not want to risk anything, to re-injure myself or whatever. And to your point, he still looked very hobbled. If you're not getting 100% Haynes King, I don't think Georgia Tech is the type of team they're going to have a difficult time winning by more than one score anyway. And if Haynes King is not at 100%, I like that even more. So this is just one of those things where I do think Georgia Tech wins this game. There's been a lot of times this year where we've talked about underdogs, where we've talked about maybe sprinkle a little bit on the money line. I'm not sold on that here. I just think it's going to be really challenging for Georgia Tech to win this by more than one score with a hobbled quarterback.
There's another play that we have, and there are so many that we already have at this point. I can't remember which one it is. It's not one I think that we're talking on show, but I had the same stat where I was looking back and I was like, should we really be getting this many points in this situation? And I found the same thing. It was one of those where it's like, yeah, they haven't beaten anybody by that much. And like, this is a decent team. And so it's like, yeah, if you haven't beaten anybody by more than one score all season in conference, but now you're playing whatever the college football equivalent of Mississippi Valley State and basketball, right? Whatever. But it's like NC State's a decent team, and so again, that doesn't mean this isn't the week. Again, one game, you never know what's going to happen. But I love that stat from you there. It's just they aren't really built, to run away from teams. The other thing that I like about this is that both these teams are playing fairly slow. They're not at the bottom. They're not quite. Air Force and Army, Navy, right? The academies where they can really grind out a game. But they're both going pretty slow. And that's another thing that's going to make it a little bit harder to run away with this because you're just not expecting as many possessions. So you take away an extra possession or two. That's one less chance that Georgia Tech has, to get that extra score and win by the extra amount needed to cover. So we're going to take NC State plus 8.5 with an A grade pick. And just as a reminder, though, of course, we're recording this on Sunday night. If you're live with us, you know that. If not, these numbers are going to move. Some of them are going to move. Some of them are going to move a lot. We don't know exactly where the number will go, but we always encourage people, of course, to shop around. We always encourage people to get these numbers in early. 2 out of 3 times the number moves the direction that we think it will. 1 out of 3 it doesn't. Sometimes you can get better numbers if you wait around a little bit. On occasion, that does happen. So it's not to say that it always goes to what we think it should. It's just in general, I would expect this to come down. Don't know if it will. But on average, it's more likely. So I always encourage people to get in early. As the line's moving, shop around, get the better of the number, 8.5, 8, whatever, 7.5, not a big deal. Of course, you get to 7, that's a big deal. So make sure we're getting over 7 on this. Again, shop around. If you don't have an account there yet, BetUS is a great book to add to your portfolio. So check them out. Moving to Saturday, I assume this is a big mood Saturday. I mean, why wouldn't it be? Indiana, Ohio State, the game we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now. The winner of this game, all but guaranteed, I guess, to go to the Big Ten championship game. I haven't gone through the exact tiebreaker scenario, so if I'm wrong on that, I feel like it's them in Oregon. Whoever wins this in Oregon is pretty much what's going to happen at this point. And so everything on the line here, Indiana on the road. I'd like this a little bit more if Indiana is at home, thinking that home crowd would just be crazy rabid for how good the football team is, chance to pull the upset. Ohio State's one of the better teams in the country. Indiana's been really good to us all season. We've talked all year about there not really being the top separating. It's just very different this year. It's not the top 4 and then a mile gap. It's the top couple and then a smaller gap and then a few more and then a smaller gap and a few more. It's a little bit different. And Indiana's just right behind Ohio State here. We've got this as Ohio State, of course, home field advantage, absolutely, and the better team, but only winning by about a touchdown. We're going to take 12 with Indiana, one of our top plays for the weekend as an A grade. Curtis Rourke, Will Howard. I mean, the model still says that Will Howard's the better quarterback slightly. I'd rather have Curtis Rourke personally. I mean, I don't want to. We try to stay grounded in the numbers and the math, but I mean, Curtis Rourke's got that it factor. We've loved to back him. We've loved to back this Indiana team. If you've been with us all season, I don't know what else there's to say about Indiana and Ohio State. Again, really good, but winning this by 14 or more is what 13 or more we have to do to cover this number. That's a lot to ask against a team that's, well coached and, should be ready to go here. We're going to take the points with Indiana. What's your take, Cousin Jared?
Something just jumps off the page here. Ohio State's pace. I mean, we have really seen the Chip Kelly come absolutely full circle in his career, from just going as fast as humanly possible to almost going as slow as
we saw it last year. I mean, UCLA was like one of our best under teams last year. It was incredible. Their offensive pace combined with the lack of offense combined with good defense. Was good for those UCLA unders last year. I'm with you. You took the words right out of my mouth. I trust Curtis Rourke more than I trust Will Howard. For me also, and you kind of talked about vibes earlier. For me, I think a lot about pressure in this game, and all of the pressure in my mind is on Ohio State. I mean, if Indiana loses this game, so what? Will it impact their playoff chances? Maybe. I think they may have talked about this on game day this week, but if Indiana loses this game 42-7, what's the conversation going to be like? Based on the schedule that they've played, should they get in? Pretty weak schedule.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is going to be a close game. I think Indiana's probably going to be in no matter what at this point, even if they lose this game. And so I think that puts all the pressure on Ohio State, because if Ohio State loses this game, then you're having a lot of different conversations. You've got the 13th game for both Indiana and Oregon. It's going to be it's going to be a lot. And I think actually being at Ohio State, not that gives Indiana an advantage at all, but if Indiana were to get up early in this game, I think the crowd could kind of start to turn on Ohio State, and everybody gets a little bit nervous. And that just, you can really feel that, when you're playing at home a lot more than on the road. So I just like Curtis Rourke more. I think Indiana has nothing to lose, and I think that makes them more dangerous than maybe they even usually are.
Because Jared, 2 questions for you. Number one, money line on Indiana. Is it something that you sprinkle on, half unit, quarter unit, dabble for fun? Or is this one of those where it's like, they might pull it off, but if they do, I just want to be rooting for it and be happy that the plus 12 wins? What's your take on that? Because this would be some big odds here.
My initial thought is I'm just going to take the 12. But I would want to see what the money line is before I say that. I don't have that right in front of me.
Okay, so, only a handful of places have money lines out, of course, on Sunday night. Second question: is the Big Ten getting 4 teams in the playoff? Are we doing that?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't want to get.
They got four of the top teams, I guess, right?
And I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but the Big 12 could potentially play its way out completely of the playoff. If Boise State wins out and Army were to somehow I don't know what they're going to do with Army. Depending on how that Notre Dame game plays out, could be really interesting. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Big 12 is going to get in. But not only do we have crazy tiebreaker scenarios in all these conferences, but I mean, it's going to be more chaos getting that 12th team in than it was any year, I think, with the 4 team. That's saying a lot for Florida State.
Except for the 2-team year, was it 2011? The year that everybody lost, other than that year, which that was just
that one was
mad
really
fun. I just would relive that year every year. We will talk about the Big 12 later because there is some really fun things happening, of course, over there every week. Western Kentucky and Liberty. Western Kentucky really let us down this last week. A bounce back spot for them here against the Liberty team that the model is just not sold on. We talked about this before with them. It's interesting. We've been fading Liberty a little bit here of late. It's mostly worked for us. That this Liberty team was one of the model was very high on last year, really believed in them. And this year just has done a complete 180. They're at number 105 this year. And that's not just because of, one, horrendously bad upset. It was low on them before. It just obviously got lower then. But this is a team last year that the model really thought, was a decent team, maybe not, worthy of being in the playoff, but one that was decent. And this year just completely flipped. Model is pretty high on Western Kentucky relative to the conference they're in. I like this spot for Western Kentucky. And this is when I'm going to talk about the vibes a little bit, and the vibes don't mean anything. So if you just want to ignore what I'm about to say, that's fine. But I watched that Western Kentucky game last week, and they just kept shooting themselves in the foot. They had a roughing the punter call that killed them. They had a big first down play that there was holding, and it just killed out, the whole drive. They had a muffed punt turnover. They had a failed 4th down inside the 10-yard line. I think they were not to say that they should have covered necessarily, but they weren't as bad as maybe the score would indicate in that game. And I think we're getting some value here. The reason I think we're getting value is people are thinking, hey, Liberty, they won the conference last year. They made the, whatever we were calling them, G. The New Year's Six games. Yeah. They made that, and they didn't look good in it, but they at least made that, right. And, thinking about what happened last week with West Kentucky, I just think West Kentucky's a better team than what they showed last week. We've got them going on the road winning this 75% of the time. 3 out of 4 times they win this. We're getting them at minus 110. Because Jared, I like this play a lot. It's not one of our top plays just because some of these smaller schools like this, Conference USA, road game, anything can kind of happen, right? I'd kind of, plus odds maybe for a top play, I guess, but at minus 110, I still think you have to fire away. And the books are putting this at 50-50. And we think West Kentucky wins this way more times than they lose it. Doesn't mean they will win. But if things play out like they should, based off like they've done all season, that West Kentucky's got a good chance to go on the road and win. What's your thought on this one?
So we've talked about this in the context of some other teams this year, but specifically with Western Liberty here, where is the bottom for Liberty? Because I think they may have started the season like low 60s, maybe around 70, now down to 105. I just don't know where the bottom is. I'm not sure that we found it. And that seems to align with what I've seen when we have either backed Liberty or just, some of these midweek games as I'm able to watch them. Just something's not right. Like just something.
We backed them kind of early, and it was like just not working, and then we flipped to fading them, and it's like it's been much better fading them than backing them.
Yes, it has been much more enjoyable for sure to fade them. But also to your point of what you were just saying, if you just look at the whole of Liberty season, they have a 6-point win against New Mexico State. They had a win over East Carolina before East Carolina kind of fixed some things. 1-score win over FIU, the loss to Kennesaw State, the loss to Jacksonville State, a 1-point win over UMass, which that was, that could have been the nadir of Liberty of the past few seasons. They would have lost that
overtime. It was an overtime game.
Yeah. But if you go look at Western Kentucky, outside of that loss last week to Louisiana Tech, they got trucked by Alabama. Okay, that's fine. And they had a 1-point loss at Boston College. Just on the whole of the season, of course, they've won all of the other games that they've played. Just on the whole of the season, Western Kentucky has been better in every single possible way, and it hasn't necessarily been close. So could Liberty finally pick this week to play up to their potential? Maybe. But as I mentioned last week, at this point in the season, you mostly are who you are. And I think that Liberty is a team that just doesn't, for whatever reason, have it this year. And I think Western Kentucky goes on the road and gets a win.
Who was it? Herm Edwards who said they were who we thought they were? Was that
this is Dennis Green?
Dennis Green,
the Cardinals.
Yeah, Cardinals. Yeah, there was a montage of these famous quotes, and I know Herm had one, and then the Dennis Green one, and so I feel like I get them all crisscrossed in my head as the montage of all the fun quotes that coaches have had over the years. But absolutely, and again, it's a reminder, right? We always talk about responsible bankroll management. Don't put too much of your money on one game because anything can happen, and so we preach that here. Never more than 5% of your bankroll in one game. Usually 1 to 2% on something you really like is perfectly fine, because like I said, Liberty might live up to their potential. But when you just look at these two teams, which team do you trust more? I mean, I trust Western Kentucky more.
Way more.
Yeah. That's the bottom line. And that doesn't mean that, again, what'll happen here, anything can happen. But if you're picking Liberty in this game, I feel like if I was backing Liberty in this game and they were to lose, I'd be like, man, what was I thinking? I haven't trusted them. You back Western Kentucky and they lose, and you go, hey, they've been the team that we've trusted all season, and Liberty hasn't been trustworthy, and so we're just going to get it right. And for me, we talk about the vibes and all that sort of stuff. For me, it's about if I'm feeling something, if I'm thinking about something, and the numbers don't back it up as in there's value, that's when I'm like, maybe I should just pass. But when the model says there's value and it kind of aligns with how I'm seeing it with my eyes, it's like, oh, that's when we think we've got good value and good, and that's what we have here. It's one of those words. Yep. It's not just us looking at it; it's that the model says there's value too, and so it's kind of having that 1-2 punch. I think helps out. Arizona and TCU, my goodness. Arizona's still hanging on to bowl hope at 4-6. TCU bowl eligible at 6-4. Two mediocre teams in the Big 12. One of our top plays, though, Arizona getting 11.5 points. I don't trust TCU to beat anybody in the Big 12 by 11.5 points. Not a single team. There's not one single team in the Big 12 I would trust them to beat by double digits. That doesn't mean they can't. I'm just saying TCU is towards the bottom of the conference, and not that Arizona's great. They've been very mediocre as well. The defense has definitely let them down at times, but you saw this last week. Arizona took care of business at home against Houston, and that doesn't necessarily mean they can go on the road and win. But I think it means that they're going to go out there and play hard still, and that should be enough to get a cover, in my opinion. What I think is going to be a lot closer game than what the line indicates. We've got TCU winning by an average of 4 points. Cousin Jared, why is this one of our top plays?
We've talked about this early in the season. Maybe we haven't just covered the Big 12 as much in the past couple of weeks. We're covering a lot of them today. I just think this conference is so close that anytime that you can get this many points in a game, generally you should take it. Maybe early in the season I would have said maybe except Houston, but as the season has progressed, I would say nope, Houston too. Just about everybody. Just anytime that you can get, what is it, double digit? Are we getting 11?
Houston went into TCU and won.
Yeah. And we're getting 11 and a half here. What
11 and a half.
Yeah. It's just too many. And I have to say, you did open my eyes this past weekend. We were trading some messages back and forth, and the one score losses that Arizona had, if a few of those go the other way, that evens out over time. Arizona's record is not nearly as bad as it looks. The numbers here would tell you they are a middling team. I'm not going to disagree with that, but the way that they have played this year, they're really just kind of on a knife's edge on a lot of those games. So with the fact that I'm like you, I just can't get there with TCU necessarily. Give me the double digits and hope that Arizona's bad luck turns into some good luck this week.
I did lie. There is one team that I would in the Big 12. That's Oklahoma State. We'll talk about them later. TCU just beat them by 25. They are the exception because of whatever the heck's happening. So we will talk about that later. So other than that game, though, that last one, TCU does not have a single conference win by more than 11 points, nor a single non-conference win against a Division I opponent by more than 11 points. And they're not bad. They're just mediocre team. And Arizona thinks it's getting a mediocre team. Why am I getting 11.5 points? It's just too many points here. Again, anything can happen, garbage scores, etc. But that's a lot of points. So we're going to take Arizona, A grade, one of our top plays for the weekend. That is the first 3 p.m. game here that we've got. Penn State and Minnesota is just after that at 3:30. B grade for this one, the The first set of picks we've had have all been A grades, B grade, over 45. We're projecting an average of 48.5 in this one. The pace of this game will not be there whatsoever. But we've seen with Penn State last week against Purdue, who cared if the pace was there? They put up like 59 points themselves, and obviously that something like that, and that's Purdue. Obviously, Minnesota's a better team than that, but we've seen Penn State be a little bit more efficient on offense than we've seen them before. Getting the offensive coordinator from Kansas, talked about that, all season. And for the first time that I can remember, the model here having the Penn State offense ranked significantly higher than the defense. Cousin Jared, over in this one, maybe a little bit of a scary play for a lot of people, given the reputations of these two schools. But two quarterbacks who can put up some points. Why are we liking the over so much?
I put this into the same category that I feel like we have put most of the Penn State games in this year, and that is that if Penn State's not playing one of the big schools, they're going to have a big day. And to your point, I think their offense having it rated number 5. And I don't think enough is said. And I mean, for sure, you can criticize James Franklin for not winning the big games. That is certainly valid. I think him going out and getting in, I'm blanking on his name right now, the Kansas offensive coordinator last year, if I would have sat down and thought about some of the coaching changes of the season and who I could have thought could have had the biggest impact, he definitely would have been on that list. So
we talked about it from week 1.
Yeah. And so 5 is higher than maybe I would have expected, but I can't say that I'm just dumbfounded that they're rated number 5. I think that is a big part of what I like here. I think Penn State's going to get into the 30s in this game. So all we need to get 10 or 14 points from Minnesota, and that'll put us over, which I think Penn State plays, some teams that like Purdue, for example, that would have a hard time scoring even in garbage time. But I think Minnesota's good enough where, towards the end of the game, Minnesota will be able to put up some points. So I think this one can get to the upper 40s.
Kotelnicki is the guy's name. That's might be why we're blanking on it, because it's not like it's the most common name out there.
Yeah.
Really roll off the tongue. He's done. He did great things at Kansas offensively there in the last several seasons. Bringing them back to relevance, along with, of course, a fantastic head coach there, and doing the same thing here in for Penn State, making their offense a whole lot better. Hasn't completely solved the problem with the big game, right? And that's its own thing. But again, that's not what we're talking about here. It doesn't really matter if they can win the big game or not. When they're playing Minnesota, it just matters, can they put up points? Because Jared, I'm not sure enough is said about, and I'm blanking on his name, the tight end, number 44. The tight end, the quarterback, the running back, the wide receiver. He's literally, I think he's the first player ever to play so many snaps in a season at all those positions. One of the plays, they had this last weekend, he lines up at quarterback, throws it to Aller, who's over there as a wide receiver, who then throws it back to him and picks up 40 yards or whatever. I mean, that guy is
and I also feel bad that I am blanking on his name right now, because probably the two outside of him, the two best tight ends in the country, one of them plays for Bowling Green. So you've been able to watch him some of these midweek games. I watched him in person when A&M played Bowling Green, and A&M couldn't cover him. I knew that he was going to be a problem for other schools. I was thinking almost any other year he would have a great shot at getting whatever the tight end of the year award is. But it doesn't matter, because this Penn State guy has that locked up. He is just on another.
Tyler Warren is.
Warren's got it locked up. If I don't know if they have like a futures market on tight end of the year.
The John Mackey Award.
Yeah. See, I would have known that. That's because I haven't played enough NCAA football recently. I'm sure that I would have known that if you would have asked me that a decade ago. Anyway, sure. Warren's got the Mackey locked up. But man, there are some good tight ends in the lower levels that, man, if Warren weren't here, we would have some unique names winning that award this year. That's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. We talk about Oklahoma State here later on. I think this is a really quick one. I don't know what there is to say about it. Other than Oklahoma State has completely fallen apart. It's been the worst season that Gundy's had that I can remember. In his tenure there, and there might have been one other random year, but I mean, Oklahoma State has bounced around between a conference title contending 10, 11, 12 win team. Last year, they made the Big 12 conference championship game. And when they're down, they win 7, 8 games and they finish strong, it seems like. And this year at 3-7, they have just gotten crushed by everybody, it seems like. We're going to take Texas Tech here on the money line at -166. Part of it is the coding. We've kind of just coded in how we're playing these things. And so the system just spits out. This is officially a money line play, A-grade play. We've got Tech winning by 11 on average, winning 73% of the time. A lot of value here either way. Oklahoma State might surprise us to win a game. Absolutely. In general, that's not what we expect to happen. So, kind of focusing on that, we don't expect it to happen. My question to you is the model spits out -166. I'm seeing -3.5 with the hook. What is your take on the difference between the money line and the spread in this situation? Big difference between -3 and -3.5, or is it one of those where maybe we're overthinking this and this is one of those where Tech probably wins by 17 and maybe we should look alt spreads like -9.5 or something?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. And then I will also tell you, do as I say, not necessarily as I do. So for me, we talked about you are who you are at this point. I'm like you. This Oklahoma State team is bad. And I feel like there have been some Gundy teams that were not the best, but, were frisky, or, you could get a Thursday night game in Stillwater, and, that was always going to be a tough game no matter what. They
randomly had some gimmick that they could pull out and hang in a game randomly, something.
Yes,
something.
Yes, they could change their offense. They could be from a running offense one year to a passing offense the next year, and, just all go seamlessly. When you look at what Oklahoma State's problem has been this year, they had so many starters returning on the offensive line. They had one of the best running backs in the country coming back, and they can't run the ball. The entire season, they have not been able to run the ball. And there's sometimes when a team has a bye week, I think Oklahoma State had a bye week last week, and you're like, okay, hey, there's just one or two things we need to fix here, and we can, be competitive again. These are things that are not going to be fixed in one bye week is what I would say. So, there is nothing here that would make me think that laying the 3.5 wouldn't be a bad play. That being said, I'm taking the money line because these two teams, I feel like this game could get drunk. I know everything that I just previously said is a factual statement, but there is just, everything inside of me is like Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. This game could just get a little bit nuts, and I just want to worry about Tech winning. I don't want to worry about how much. I don't want to care if it gets to overtime. I just want Texas Tech to win. So you have my full support if you want to lay the 3.5. I personally am going to be taking the money line.
There's a reason that the total from the books and the model is in the upper 60s. For this game, we're expecting a lot of points. Tech's played in some drunk games this season. Tech and Oklahoma State have played in some classic Big 12 drunk games.
Yes.
No, that's not really relevant to this, even though Gundy is still there. Gundy has changed his style every other season, depending on what he's had. So I don't think it's overly relevant. It's especially interesting to me because Tech's head coach is a former Baylor assistant coach, and me, I'm a Baylor graduate, and he was a defensive coach, a linebackers coach, and went over there and was going to make the defense better. And all of a sudden, it's just like he got there and was just like, no, the culture here is offense. I don't quite understand it because schools can change, right? Baylor, when I was a student there, when I was a grad student there, high offense, great defense, no defense whatsoever. And then, they bring in that rule and the defense is fantastic, right? So it's like they can change, and Tech just hasn't. They're just like all offense, no defense, fast pace. Oklahoma State has no defense. So this game could get drunk. My recommendation, I'm going to say alt spread -6.5. Get you some plus like, I don't know what you're going to get, plus 130, plus, something like that. Might be a fun way to play it because then at least if it's a one-score game, you're still alive. But Tech could run away with this one. It could be a drunk game, but either way, I just don't have any faith in this Oklahoma State team at this point. So we're going to take the Red Raiders. Missouri, Mississippi State, 4:15 p.m. Eastern. Missouri, get it done for us against South Carolina. Game we gave it here on the show 1 week ago where, you kind of said you thought it could be a little bit of a rock fight. And it turned out to be a little bit more of an entertaining rock fight. The model also loved the over. Gave out an A grade on that. And the over, hit with ease. But Missouri, battling back there in the second half, entertaining second half, back and forth, and we got so many points. It didn't really matter. who won in the end because we were getting a ton of points. That was against a really good, on the road, against a really good South Carolina team. The South Carolina team, the model has, top 15. That despite some of their losses this season, they've been to really good teams. They've played one of the tougher SEC schedules. The South Carolina team is really good. Mississippi State is not. It's very rare, but we do see it every year with a team or two that the model has one of these big schools, one of these SEC schools down in the bottom, 20, 30 teams. And we've got Mississippi State outside of the top 100 here. Usually the SEC has a team here. It's Vanderbilt. And that is not the case this year. The Mississippi State team, we've talked really all year. They've struggled. We don't think they're very good. We've got Missouri winning this by an average of 24 points. So we're going to lay the points here with Missouri. 7.5, because Jared, this is a great candidate for our honorary. And ironically enough, it was the Mississippi State play of the year. That was a couple years ago that we had that where we talked about, hey, we got to worry about key numbers here and whatnot. But sometimes we're focused on the wrong key number. That was a game several years ago where we laid,
we laid 8.5.
8.5, and it was like, people, we're about 7. No, you should be worried about like 14, 17, and that's where the game ended up. And here it's 7.5. It's the same sort of thing. If you can find a 7, hey, yes, absolutely. Love it even more, just because you never know. But backdoor type stuff, anything can happen, right? But in general, this is more likely to be a blowout than a close game, even though it's on the road. Brady Cook back last week from Missouri, put up plenty of points against a very good South Carolina defense. That was very, very, very good South Carolina defense. Mississippi State defense, nowhere near that good. Even half of a Brady Cook should be good enough to get the job. And win by double digits from Missouri. A grade pick from us, Cousin Jared. What you got for us?
Well, you said that we talked last week about that could potentially be a rock fight. I was not. Brady Cook was questionable. I was not anticipating that Brady Cook was going to play.
I was thinking he was more likely he didn't than he did. And
Cook, the guy who I can't remember which game it was earlier this season where he had to leave, go get X-rays or something at the hospital, and came back in
the second half. I was like, I'll just keep playing.
Like he's that kind of guy. So like, not only is he a good quarterback, but the emotion that he probably instills in the offense and gets them to play, at a higher level, just based on his attitude. Clearly, he's going to do everything he can to be out there. So if Cook's playing, like 100%, we're focusing on the wrong number here. What I will say is, Mississippi State's bad. If you want to have a glimmer of hope about Mississippi State, you could say, well, their offense has improved. Okay, yes, it's still bad, but it has improved. Missouri is not the team that they're going to be able to show that improvement against. I think Missouri's defense is pretty good. And you have to keep in mind, this is the Mississippi State team that got trucked by Toledo in Starkville earlier this season. Definitely the team has grown up and matured a little bit since then. I think especially their offense has improved since then. But there are plenty of times where you, as the mathematical person, will tell you we're focusing on the wrong numbers. And I'm like, I understand it. I may not feel it in my bones, but I understand what you're saying. This is one where I feel it in my bones. You're looking at the wrong number. 7.5, who cares? 9.5, who cares? 10, who cares? 14, I would probably still play it at 14. It's not our favorite thing to do, to lay double digits, but I still think, but I still think this is the time to do it. So anyway, Missouri, great play.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of a heartbreaking loss for them last week, but this isn't really a trap game, in my opinion. They do have Arkansas next week, which is a rivalry game, admittedly. They have a trophy, I guess, but who doesn't have a trophy these days, it seems like.
Yeah, that's true.
Arkansas is not the strongest team in the world, right? That's a home game. That's, senior day, senior night, depending on when they put the game. So, I don't really see it, as a game where it's like, oh, well, we coming off of this and we're looking forward to this one so we could trip up against a bad team. This is just go out and get the job done. They're like everybody else at this point. They're looking for wins. They're 7-3. They got a chance to finish with 10 wins. They win this one. They win next week. They get the bowl. To me, it's not about, how do you overlook when you got a chance for a 10-win season, right? How do you overlook a team, coming off a loss like that? So I think it's a good spot here to back Missouri and take out their frustrations against, again, what somehow has turned into the worst team in the SEC. One that I know is, we've talked about it, right? Had some coaching issues. and that whole unfortunate situation, and just trying to figure out who they are and what they're doing. And like you said, it's not the week to figure that out here against Missouri.
Nope.
They're just, I feel like, looking to get to the offseason, reassess, get some good practice time in, and head to next year. And like I said, I think there's chances this one gets ugly. So we're going to lay it with Missouri. Good alt spread game to look at also as well, in my opinion.
Yep.
Baylor and Houston to the night slate here, 7 p.m. Eastern. Kiz and Jared, we'll do this like always here. What we like to do with Baylor, since I'm the Baylor guy, is we'll flip this around and we'll let you tee this up for me.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not going to do much teeing up here. Houston plays low-scoring games exclusively. They almost refuse to score points. Why are we going over in this game?
I think we're going over for that number 17 there for Baylor's offense. That's number 17, and the model does look at recent play. But here's the thing, and this is where, again, this is an educational show as well. We want you, viewer, we want to give out picks. We want to help people make money. Absolutely. That's our number one goal. But our number two goal is how do we help you make money? How do we help you as a better make better bets, make smarter bets, right? Avoid, there is a balance between looking at recent play and looking at the big picture. We talk about this in every single sport. You can't just look at what happened in your last game. You can't just look at the last three, right? There are times when that matters more. There's times when that matters less. That's where we have to look at that and try to find that balance. The model is trying to balance that out. The model is for every team trying to say, how do we not ignore the data that we have from last season that matters, which at this point is pretty small, but it's there. It's still a player-based. Look what these players did last year. How do we balance what happened in weeks 2 and 3, which is, it's not huge. It's small as we go. How do we look at what happened recently? How do we not ignore that, right? But we don't want to give it the same weight either.
Yep.
And it's trying to do it in a manner that is balanced and good and overall big picture as accurate as possible. There are a couple of teams where that's not going to work for. And that's where we talk about having to know the model in that situation. This Baylor team is one of them. We talked about it in the offseason. I was a guy who was not a fan of bringing back Dave Aranda as a Baylor fan. I thought he had his chance. I wasn't a fan of it. I thought we're going into this new season and it's like, oh, it's everyone else's fault but mine. And here's how we're going to fix it. And it's like, dude, you let us here, Yeah. But the one thing that happened in the offseason that I like, you've talked to, Jake Spavital as a coach. We knew he was a great offensive mind, and bringing him as offensive coordinator, that was the one thing that I said could be his lifeline. And in the case of this Baylor offense, they have looked better and better and better every week. Against West Virginia, they looked like a freaking train. I mean, I am talking about on the road in a hostile, very difficult environment. Yep. They looked like they could have been a top 5 offense in college football. I mean, they looked incredible. And that's not me as a fan speaking. I'm happy to fade my teams. And I've faded them before all the time. We faded Baylor all year last year, right? Yeah. They looked, now the defense still has some question marks, of course, and that's where we go back to Aranda being the problem. He's the one calling the defensive plays, but that offense looks really good. Baylor might score 50 points themselves in this game because I think that offense is just absolutely clicking. The other thing, because we are going, we don't expect Baylor to score 50 points. We're going over 50 and a half. A couple things I like about this. Number one, we're on the south side of the two key numbers in the low 50s, 51 and 52. 53 and 54 don't really matter as much. It's very unlikely you land on those. So at 50 and a half, I like this going over. At 52 and a half, which is where the model thinks this should be, I don't think there's a lot of value. I think that 51 and 52 just push it over the edge. I think this game could have 60 points. This game could have 40 points. I mean, sports are variable, right? Every game is variable. But the fact that this game has a really a 5-10% chance, whatever it is, to land on 51 and 52, we get to win on both those, pushes it into this is worth the play for me. On top of that, let's look at what Houston did last week against Arizona. They scored 3 points. And you say, they just scored 3 points. How are they going to help us with this total? Houston had 11 less total yards than Arizona in that game. They averaged more yards per play than Arizona in that game. Folks, the Big 12 is weird. And we've been talking about that all season. Houston just couldn't get it done on third down. They had 2 lost fumbles and threw a pick. They should have done better than they did in that game. And to me, that's the bottom line. If you're looking, I think there's a little bit of value in this number because people are looking at what happened last week and saying Houston only got 3 against Arizona. Oh my gosh, they've packed it in for that. I don't think was representative. I think Houston could put up a few points. This Baylor defense can have some holes in it, and I love this Baylor offense right now. So to me, that's why we're going over. Hopefully, all that makes sense. Because Jared, do you have anything else to add to all of my my weekly Baylor sermon? I guess.
No. I that was ironic. No, nothing at all. Nothing at all to add. Baylor's offense is good. Houston's offense, and I the only thing I will say is since they made the change to Chris, they went back and forth between the Tech transfer and Chris early in the season. Since they've settled on Chris, I do feel like Houston's offense has at least been a little more consistent. So I can see based on everything you provided there, I'm with you. And of course, we'll always appreciate going over a number like 50.5.
Absolutely. As a reminder, folks, the show is not brought to you by Ice Cold Dr. Pepper, but if you work for Dr. Pepper and are listening, we would love your support. So
yes,
it's always a good reminder. We do thank BetUS, of course, for helping us keep the lights on here. So again, shout out to BetUS. Iowa State and Utah. One of our top plays over 43. Cousin Jared, a couple thoughts here. First off, we went over in the Utah-Colorado game last week. It was an A-grade play. Over 44, 45, something like that.
Yep.
And, I was thinking to myself, I said, Utah can't score. And Colorado's defense is so improved and might be one of the best, in the conference. How in the world are we going over in this game? And I started having doubts Saturday morning. I was having doubts Saturday morning.
Really?
Like, yeah, I was having some doubts.
I saw those gorgeous live shots from the Big 12 noon kickoff Big noon kickoff at 10 a.m. And saw that it was perfectly clear weather.
Oh yeah,
and,
the weather was great.
And I was thinking, over. Yeah, no, great. Yeah.
I was just like, man, I'm nervous. This game's going to be, 21-6 or something. And that game flew over. It was like third quarter. It was done.
Third quarter. Yeah.
You knew
in the third quarter.
Yeah. Similar situation. We're going to go over in a Utah game. Utah's defense isn't what it once was. And its offense isn't obviously as good as it can be with Cam Rising. But I think there's value in this over for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think people are thinking about these two teams of previous versions when Iowa State and Utah are both, fantastic on defense. And that's not exactly what we have here. And it's not that this game will have a lot of pace, but 43 is not a lot of points. Your key number here is 44. Getting the win on 45 is just an added bonus of a possibility. Their model says 52. It just feels a lot like that Colorado game where it's like if you overthink it, you might kind of come up with all these reasons why it might be low scoring. But the proof's in the pudding. We nailed that over with Utah. We've got a lot of overs with Iowa State here. They've become a better offensive team than defensive, which is crazy to say. Because Jared, what's your take on this over 43? Agard, one of our top plays for the week.
Yeah, that you basically hit on what I wanted to say, which was both of these teams are underrated offensively. And Iowa State, you would definitely say, well, people would say they have a good offense. If you told them that was number 33 overall, people might have a little bit of a hard time believing that. But yeah, ironically, the offense with Iowa State has not been the problem this year. And Utah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you that Utah's offense is good. But again, this show is all about the math. And the Utah offense is not terrible. By Power 4 standards, it's not good.
It's not good,
but it's not near the bottom. It's not Mississippi State. It's not it's not Oklahoma State. And I mean, and that's saying something. So I think this Utah, and we've seen this across the board the past few weeks with Utah's offense. Like people just have zero faith in Utah's offense, and I think that's unwarranted. They are going to be okay. They will find a way to score 14, 17 points, maybe catch them on a good day, maybe they'll get 21. And in a game like this, I think that's all you need. Get them to get 17 points. And I think Iowa State can do the rest.
And you said it, and I'm going to kind of run with what you said. Iowa State's offense has not been the problem. When they only beat UCF by 3 at home, the problem was the fact that they gave up 35 points to UCF. That was the problem. When they lost to Kansas, it's because they gave up 45 points. I mean, the old school Iowa State from several years ago would have never done either one of those things. And so, there's just too many ways that this can get over in college sports. Well, scoring, you saw it even against Cincinnati, the game last week, got to 51. And I don't really see Cincinnati and Utah being that different. Both of them are just kind of ho-hum, mediocre, run-of-the-mill type teams. And so something like getting 44-45, 47-48, 51-52, all these are like, yeah, sure. Any of those are very possible. And that's not to say, of course, that 41 isn't possible as well. And of course, it's just there's way more of the possible things that are reasonable on the win side of this than the loss side, which is one of why it's one of our top plays. Again, top play at 43, top play at 43.5. Cousin Jared, still a big discrepancy at over 44. I know you'd advocate playing it as a top play at over 44. Mm-hmm. If it gets to 44.5, is that still top play territory for you? And if so, up to what number?
I would say 45. And then if it goes over 45, honestly, it may still be relative a top play to the other stuff that's out there this week. Okay. So I like this. Definitely would play it up to 48 for sure. But yeah, 45 is 45 or below. Love it.
Love it. All right. I have a couple more thoughts here before we move on to this next game. First off, when you talk about relative to other things, I'm curious your take on this because I know our viewers are probably thinking the same thing I am, which is we get to this point of the season and we know so much and we start overthinking so much. How do you handle that and view that? Because I look at the slate and I start going through, here's what the model likes. Okay, where do I really agree with it? Where do I really like it? And here's what I love and how I'm feeling about it. But there's so much data running around my own brain by this point of the season. How do you handle that? Because it's relative to other things, right? So it's like, this is one of the plays we really like. We have, as we said, again, 8 top plays of all the other plays that we like. How are you deciphering all that in your brain?
So I say that another way. I feel like you're asking kind of how do I tier things?
Yeah. And I feel like the process has got to be a little bit different at this point of the season because there's just so much information coming at you from so many different directions because we've seen so many games at this point.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the big things is I generally just don't, at this point in the season, especially unless it's just 2 teams that are really outclassing, I don't want to be laying big numbers. For example, one that we could mention real quick, like Texas. I love Texas against Kentucky. You got to lay 20.5 points.
That's a lot of
almost points. Any other week. I would still like that. Got to look ahead spot though.
A little bit of a look ahead spot.
Yeah, Texas and A&M playing
not just the rivalry game, but the first time the rivalry game's happening in a long time. Conference title game spot on the line. Happening here with that one.
And so you gotta look at some spots like that. And also, I kind of already mentioned it at the top of the show. But weather in some areas, do I really want to go over in a game? Depending on what the weather's like in that location, and everything. And you also have to take into account just what's worked for us this year. So those are almost auto play. So we talked about the Penn State over. That's just one hey, it's been real good to us. We're just going to roll with it. And then you also just kind of have to nix everything. I mean, I could go through here and look at some of the A grades that we have. And I kind of mentioned this earlier too, but hey, we know this is an A grade, but we also know this is just a blind spot that Sideline has. And so really, when you start looking at all those things, it kind of just naturally works itself out. You can go look at our results for the season. Totals around key numbers, that's always the thing that is going to be at the top of my list. Anytime we can get a wrong team favored situation, those are probably going to be right below that. And then kind of the rest of the things kind of fall after that. So that was a long-winded answer. Don't know if you got what you wanted out of that, but
no, I think it's good things to be thinking about at this point of the season. Cause I think, like I said, a lot of our viewers, I'm sure, are in that same boat where it's but this happened. Oh, but this happened. And you can kind of spin yourself in a circle. And so it's why we have the model to help keep us grounded, but we still have to try to figure out how to sort through it all. And so I just think any sort of spark that we can give our viewers.
Well, okay. So another way to answer that question, in Western Kentucky was actually one of the ones that I had this as an example of. Like, it is very easy to look at that result last week with the loss to Louisiana Tech and be like, hey, I'm off Western Kentucky. Like, that's the kind of loss where, makes me afraid to back them. But, we talk about variability happening every week. Like, it's very rare that you're going to have a team that just, unless it's Indiana, you're not gonna be able to back a team every single week and it work out for you. If a team wins, 60% of the time when you back them, or even 55% of the time when you back them, like, that's been a good team
still good
for you to back. Yeah. So, like, you also have to keep that perspective. And, Western Kentucky is just the one that comes to mind. Like, if you look at last week, you're going to be scared of Western Kentucky. But if you look at the course of the season, like, yeah, you're still going to feel good about that bet.
And I love a good bounce back spot too. I always love, people overreacting to what they just saw. And sometimes you need to overreact, but where we can kind of keep a level head, a lot of times it makes a lot of sense. Last thing here I want to talk about, because we mentioned earlier, the Big 12, there is a scenario where there is an 8-team tie for first place. It's 1-8 are all tied at 7-3 in conference.
And if there is ever a conference that deserves that, like, not from like a karma perspective, but just from the teams that they have assembled together, it is this Big 12. They would deserve that. Yeah,
absolutely. And so I think there's a scenario like where Baylor still gets the Big 12 championship game, which is hilarious. Yeah. A comment here, Bruce in the chat, like, Hawaii got destroyed by UC. Another absolutely great example. Like, there's week to week variance, and it's like we have to then figure out, and you viewer have to figure that out and say, okay, what do we make of that? Like, Hawaii's been a really good team to us all season. We know that we can't necessarily likely back a team every week. I always go back to one of the first years I was into sports betting. I've been in 2010. It was like Stanford, Clemson, Oklahoma State combined to go like 29-3 against the spread or something like that. And it was just backing those teams every single week. And you don't get a lot of that, right? And so how do you then view that with that? Because Hawaii wasn't even competitive in that game. We liked them there. And it's like, do you then kind of say, oh, I've got to overreact, or do you keep a level head? How do you view that? And that's a tough thing to do. And so that's why we try to stay grounded in the model. We try to watch as much as we can. And the thing with Western Kentucky, the bounce back spot for me was I watched that game. Otherwise, I might not have known, and had the feeling, I think they just really kind of shot themselves in the foot. I don't think they're that bad. I think they just, stuff happens and stuff can happen again. But hey, clean that up and they'll look a whole lot better. We move now to Army and Notre Dame. We've not done this in a long time. All the big games we've had picks on. It's the first time we have no official play on this game, at least as of the moment, but it's one of the bigger games of the weekend. Obviously, big playoff implications. We like this Army team. We think they're better than average. Still high on Notre Dame, been high on Notre Dame all season, despite that NIU game. And I've mentioned it weeks ago. I said, hey, you look at Notre Dame and you take that one game away, and I know you can't quite do that, but they looked pretty good. They've taken care of business against the bad teams. They've played some good teams. The model's still high on them. Model says they win by an average of 21 points. It's a neutral site game. This is in Yankee Stadium. I think it will be fairly neutral site. Obviously, Army's closer. That travel will help them, but there will obviously be a ton of Notre Dame fans in that crowd. So I'm treating it as a true neutral site game. The dimensions are going to be weird, so it's not like either team's going to have an edge there. The model likes laying 17 with Notre Dame. A couple of reasons this isn't an official pick. Number one, as you just got through saying, laying big numbers is a scary thing to do, especially this time of year. You want to feel like you have a big mismatch, or you want to feel like you've got a team that is, pissed off or lines up really well with them or whatever like that. The second thing is I'm not convinced that Army can't hang in this game. Was that a good use of a double negative there? I don't know. But I mean, Army can Army this game up, right? Like, I'm not, it's one of those things. And this is what we talk about, right? We got to look at what the model says, keep us grounded in that. And then sometimes you look at it and you say, yeah, I agree. I love it. Sometimes you go, yeah, I don't, maybe, but also like Army can Army this thing up. They're dead last in pace. They can just grind this game out, keep it low scoring. I don't know if they win. They probably don't. The model gives them a mere 7% chance of winning. So highly unlikely that they win the game. And if you look at your money line odds, it's probably going to be in that same 10-ish % ballpark that you're going to get a great price on Army pull. They could pull it off. They could NIU this game, right? But because I'm a little bit worried about Army.
Yeah.
I saw this last year with Air Force. You remember Air Force last year was so good. They were crushing everybody. They looked like a machine, and they just didn't have the depth. In the middle of the season, they had a game where they looked shaky. I think they ended up losing a game, and Army hasn't lost one yet, but they've had a couple games where they looked a little shakier. And Air Force just looked weaker and weaker as the season went along, just not having that same depth. Is this the same thing with Army? I'm a little bit nervous about them. So I'm kind of of two minds. So no pick from us, but viewer, good discussion here. We can kind of say, here's kind of your reasons for one thing. Here's kind of your reasons for the other. One of them resonates with you. You like it. We're kind of staying off. Cousin Jared, how are you seeing it?
What I under normal circumstances, I could be like, hey guys, let's go look at what happened in the Notre Dame Navy game, because that would be a great analog for this one. But you can't, because Navy had whatever it was, 6 turnovers in that game, something ridiculous, 3 turnovers in the first, 20 minutes of the game, something like that. And
it's a whole season's worth of turnovers for an academy.
Yeah. And not only that, but I remember when we talked about that, and we talked about big plays and how I thought both teams would be able to limit the big plays. And that's not what happened either. Notre Dame had a bunch of big plays, maybe not super surprising, but Navy had some big plays in that game. And Army's offense is even better than Navy's offense is. So I'm like you. I would love to take a look at that Navy game against Notre Dame and be able to draw some conclusions from it, but I just can't. And I could talk myself into just about anything in this game, but then I could come look at the other side and I could talk myself out of it for those exact same reasons. I'm hoping this game is fun and close. Bryson Daly is great. I hope that he has a really good game. He's been one of the better academy quarterbacks in a while. And so I hope that he just has a good game and he can maybe get, more respect than maybe what he's gotten so far, just because, he plays for Army. But hoping this one's close, but I have no idea what to expect.
And Cousin Jared, so I'm gonna put you on the spot here. We haven't talked about this. Is there a number on the side or the total that you could get behind? Right now, it looks like the total sitting around 45. The spread's around 17. Of course, it's Sunday night. By the time you're watching this, viewer, if you're not with us live, you're not watching this on Monday, it may be very different. But, is there, right around a key number there? Are you going over a 44, 43 and a half? Or is there a spread number where if it gets to Notre Dame, only minus 14, where you just say, there's just too much of a talent discrepancy. And my heart says I want Army to hang in there, but gosh, I can't pass it up. Like, where's your head on that?
If this got to 44, you could probably talk me into it, because going over 44, because if Notre Dame blows Army out, they may get close to 44 themselves.
The model's not a high on that Army defense, and that would be that would be how it happens.
And if Army keeps this close, I think they've got to get at least 21, 24, 28 points to keep it close. So I do think if this got to 44, you could talk me into it. I think the worst case scenario is Army has, so the way that bet would lose. So I'm going to tell you, I would go over 44. And I'm going to tell you the way that would lose is Army has a bunch of time chewing clock and either settles for field goals or gets stuffed on fourth and short. Yeah.
Where that's that ugly 17-13 or whatever. I don't know what the final score was. It was weirder than that.
And they chew up 10 minutes and come away with 0 points from a drive, and that's going to make it really difficult to go over even a number like 44. So let's see if we get to 44, we'll make a decision then.
I'll pull it now. I'm seeing some 44 and a half, but hasn't gotten. And you never know. 44, obviously, the book still it's a key number 2, so it's not like they're just going to move it there, without thinking it through. And the spread's kind of in that 14 to 17 range. So it should be a good game, something to keep an eye on. But at least for us, a pass. One last game to cover, but just as a reminder, if we've been helping you make money, we would really appreciate your support helping us keep the lights on here. Again, we spend a lot of time doing this, and this is my full 9 to 5. So if you are able to support us, we would really appreciate that. There's a picks only package for $20 a month. It's all the picks. Denoted by the top play, so you can kind of scale your bets if you want. Some promo codes get you in the door for cheaper. Hopefully, we can make you some more money, and then it's a symbiotic relationship, right? We're each just helping each other out. So I would really appreciate that if you can consider that, and you have not yet signed up. over there on Dub Club. A lot of different options for you. And if you're already there, again, we always thank you so much for your support. And if you're not, please consider it. Last thing we're talking about here, Vanderbilt and LSU, the only other B grade here that we've got on this show. Got a couple other B grades we like, a lot of A grades we like over there on Dub Club. Under 55, a key number here, one of the most common outcomes in college football is 55. We sent this out to Dub Club. Right now, because Jared, I'm not seeing a 55, or I'm not seeing many 55, seeing some more 54 and a half. So it's one of those where, again, we send this out and we tell people, especially on a Sunday, go get these as fast as possible. Model says 52.7. First off, what do you like about this under? Second off, how do you feel about 54 and a half versus 55, knowing that we're kind of right on that border, and hopefully everybody out there on Dub Club already got 55, and if not, how you're kind of handling that?
Yeah, so I like it a lot more at 55 than I do at 54 and a half is what I would say. If this went down to 54 and a half, I would not play it. I would wait and see what it does for the rest of the week. Hopefully it'll pop back up to 55 is what I would say. If it's at 54 and a half, I'd really be on the edge. I think I'd still play it under, but I would really have to look into that a little more closely. But the reason I like this play under 55, so this is a B grade. This is not an A grade. But the reason that I still like this one is LSU, and you've seen this the past couple of weeks, and I was willing to give them a pass whenever they played. I guess the first week I really noticed it at least was when they played Texas A&M, not just because I was there, but because, such a spotlight, 2 undefeated SEC teams, all of that good thing. LSU cannot.
That was for first place in the conference, which was crazy.
Yeah. LSU can't run the ball, and it is very obvious. It's not like they don't run the ball very much. It's just they literally cannot run the ball. And
if you watch that Florida LSU game, which we had Florida as an A grade plus money, you saw that in the second half. They could not get the ground game going, and it just became a situation where a run was for nothing, and otherwise they were going after Nussmeier and putting pressure on him, and it was tough sledding for that offensive line.
And I think that anytime that a team is this one-dimensional, even a team like Vanderbilt this year, still an SEC team. I know they're ranked number 73 overall, but when you are that one-dimensional, it allows the defense to, attack you in a very specific ways when you cannot kind of counter that. And you can see with Vanderbilt here, and our boy Diego Pavia, we love him, but the defense for Vanderbilt has definitely been the more bright spot than what their offense has been. In that, looking back on it now, that victory over Alabama, that was more about Vanderbilt, being able to get some points on the board and then just have their defense hang on for dear life.
Hang on, that was the exact phrase I was thinking.
Yeah, slash lean on their defense to win the game, because Vanderbilt went big gaps in that second half without putting up points.
Without doing anything.
Yeah. And so I think that's what's going to happen here. I think LSU is going to win this game, but I think that they're going to struggle to get past, like 28, 31 points just because of how one-dimensional they are. And then I just don't think that Vanderbilt's offense is going to be able to score enough points to offset that. One of the rare times that you can say LSU's defense is going to have an advantage in an SEC game. You can't say that very often. So I think this
number 80 defense in the country is one of the worst for a Power 4 school.
Yeah. So I think this one could end up in the upper 40s or low 50s. And so 55s being so key. This was one just too good to pass up at 55.
It wouldn't surprise me if this ticks back up to 55, simply because people are going to look at LSU's offense and what they've done. And, they're obviously.
And the one player that everybody knows on Vanderbilt is their quarterback. So.
And Vanderbilt, it's like their whole offense is Pavia, and it's like Pavia and the defense is like all they've got, really. And the thing, of course, too, that pace for Vanderbilt, they really are trying to slow the game down. And we talk a lot of times in both college football and college basketball about are teams being smart with their pace? Are they lining up with their strengths? And Vanderbilt being much improved, obviously, and 6-4 bowl eligible is great for a school like that. Still one of the weaker teams in a very good conference, knowing they're outmatched almost every single week. It's smart to play a slower pace, and they've got some smart coaches there who know what they're doing, and you want to grind a game out at that point, especially if you have a good defense, and just say, we're going to let our defense do our thing, slow this down, minimize possessions, and give ourselves a chance for the upset. And they've been able to pull off a few upsets or some close ones, like the Texas game where they just couldn't quite get it done, but they hung around. And so kudos to them for saying, we know we aren't the most talented team. We're going to slow this down. That's going to help us with the under as well, right? They're not going to be trying to play a super fast paced game. And so that is also in our favor. I think it's a really interesting matchup from an efficiency standpoint. I mean, you've got strength on strength and weakness on weakness, and it is extreme. Yeah. You don't really see in Power 5 a lot of times, or I guess in any conference, really. I mean, it's such good offense and defense paired with bad offense and defense, right? It's a pretty wild how that'll play out, but it'll be mostly an even matchup there. Vanderbilt slowing the pace, and that's why we think we should have a fewer number of points. Books are thinking it's to be more of an average game. We think it'd be a little bit slower. So we're going to go again under 55 is a play we send out. 54.5 kind of right now. Hold off on that. Let's hope it gets to 55. If you're listening to Discord and someone sees a 55, we drop a note there. We've got a great Discord community, a lot of people looking out for each other, and so dropping that note in there and making sure everybody knows, if it gets back to 55 and you haven't gotten it, go ahead and run and get your under wager in at that point. Because Jared, that's all we've got here. Went back over an hour.
We have a reputation to uphold.
And I think, again, we're getting to the point of the season where there's a lot of things happening. As you mentioned, there's a lot of A grades that we aren't on this week for specific reasons, a lot of look-ahead spots to rivalry games, or a lot of games that are rivalry games this week, and that matters as well. And so a lot of things happen this week. It'll be the same thing next week. Should be a lot of fun.
And flying under the radar, I feel like I think this is the most games we've had all season.
This is a lot of games.
This is a big slate. So there is a lot out there. Again, join us on Dub Club. You've got, notes and projections for all. I'm going to go with whatever half of 126 is, 63 games.
62 because the header.
62 games. Yeah, it's a lot. So make sure to join us over there. More data than you can shake a stick at. And that doesn't even include a Saturday college basketball slate, which I don't know how many games we had on Saturday for college basketball.
Thankfully, they aren't full yet because I think they kind of spread some of their games out a little bit more here earlier in the season. But yeah, when we get to the Saturdays in the spring, my goodness, it's going to be the 150 games in a day is just too many. It's like I just feel exhausted by the end of a Saturday. I'm just spent. Too much happening. That's our show then. Again, we thank you for watching. If you're live with us, we appreciate you hanging out. If you weren't, again, college basketball shows 9 p.m. Eastern throughout the week, and then Sunday night we'll do college football again another few times. We'll have some bowl shows as well, so we'll be doing this kind of routinely. Hop in, ask questions, throw comments about the games you're talking about. We'd love to interact with y'all as much as possible. And if not here, of course, over on Discord, which you can access through Dub Club. As always, we wish you the best of luck and remind you that you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.